So I bought this FZ1. It's a 2007 FZ1. I bought it from a friend, which kind of goes against my philosophy of never buying or selling vehicles to people you know. You know, growing up in my parents' household, my dad, there was a couple of vehicles that he sold to some relatives or friends, and then you know, they would get into accidents and total the car, or you know, a couple of years later something would break in the vehicle, you know, just from old age, just normal wear and tear. But you know, I always felt like somehow they were blaming you. Oh, you sold me a bad car, you know, even though the car was perfect when we sold it to them. So to avoid you know, those kinds of issues, I typically, you know, I've had a lot of vehicles that I've bought and sold over the years, and well, when I go to sell them, you know, even though I know one of my friends is interested, or they tell me, yeah, you know, let me know if you're going to sell it, I always say, no, man. When I sell a vehicle, I never want to hear about it again. I never want to see it again. So I don't want anything to come between us. So I'm not gonna sell you my car, and I don't want anything to go wrong with it later that you somehow think that I didn't disclose. But anyway, I made an exception in this case. So I bought my friend's FZ1. It's as he calls it, a well-sorted bike, in the sense that, you know, this is Gen 2 FZ1s. Had several known issues that, you know, the aftermarket kind of dealt with. A lot of things had to do with fueling problems due to emissions regulations, I suppose, noise regulations. So this bike has a Power Commander 5, I guess it is, and a flash, an ECU flash from Ivan Performance, I believe. He also included like 2 or 3 different windscreens. This is not the stock one, but he also gave me the stock one. The stock seat and a comfort seat. It's got Q3 Plus tires. It's got some adjustable shorty levers. I'm not sure if this is an aftermarket riser or if it's stock, but then he's got a mount here for, you know, like radar detector, GPS. It's got a gear indicator. What else? Oh yeah, one of the most important ones. I guess the rear end of the stock FZ1 was known for being kind of bouncy or underdamped, and this one has, let me get ahead of this traffic here. This one has an R1 rear shock. I guess you have to buy a special adapter to adapt that shock. It also has this steering damper, an RCS steering damper. What else? Some aftermarket grips. And tank protector. That's pretty common stuff. But you know, another common complaint I think with the Gen 2 FZ1s was excessive vibration. But my friend who sold me this one, he's had 2 FZ1s, the Gen 2s, and the first one he had didn't have the Power Commander 5 or any kind of fuel tuning, and that one had a lot of vibration, and this one he says really has none. So it seems to be a fueling issue that was producing those extra vibrations potentially. And yeah, it feels very smooth. I also have a Multistrada, 2nd gen Multistrada. Before that I had a Gen 1 Multistrada. So it's kind of interesting to compare those 2 bikes to this one. You know, I've had Japanese 4-cylinder bikes in the past, and I kind of went to V-twins for like 5 years, I guess. And so yeah, it's got this, you know, smoother, more electric feel to it. You know, with the 4 cylinders, the vibrations are different. The Multistrada, the Ducati V-twins have a much more noticeable vibration, but it's a pleasant vibration. It's not bothersome at all. It's, you know, lower frequency. You got 2 big cylinders thumping along, and it's kind of gives it character. But this one, I mean, this one feels just a little bit, I guess, friendlier as far as throttle inputs and just the smoothness of how the power comes on. It's more powerful than the Multistrada Gen 2 even, because of the aftermarket tune as far as the peak horsepower. But it's pretty soft in the low revs, so it feels very docile and manageable as you're taking off and just city driving. It's it's not until you get to really high revs that you kind of feel a greater amount of thrust. But even when that happens, it kind of comes on linearly. It's not like a VTEC jump or anything that just all of a sudden hits you. It's pretty smooth as it ramps up in power. So it's quite a bit different feeling. The brakes, I guess the initial bite feels a little bit weaker on these brakes, but because it doesn't have such a long travel suspension as the Multistrada, it actually feels fairly responsive on the brakes. Like I don't know, it feels like you start slowing down a fraction of a second sooner than the Multistrada, just because there's less suspension travel to compress through, I guess. What else? I mean, I really haven't pushed it hard in corners or anything yet, so I'm not sure how it's going to feel in more aggressive riding. Like I said, it feels very smooth as far as the vibrations. The suspension compared to the Gen 2 Multistrada I have has the stock suspension, the base suspension and stock suspension. The Gen 1 I had Öhlins. It was the S version. So I mean, it feels well damped. It feels a little bit more comfortable overall than my Gen 2 Multistrada. It feels compliant, but at the same time still pretty well controlled. But like I said, I haven't pushed that hard. This bike has no electronics, no safety net like the Multistrada does. So that's one significant difference. So yeah, with no electronics, I do have to be a little bit more careful. Although the Q3 Plus tires that are on here now, which I'm also using on my Multistrada, are super sticky. They have great grip. When they start losing traction, they kind of feel very progressive. It seems like you're not going to lose it entirely quickly. You start feeling a little bit of slip and as you're letting go. But I mean, in the Multistrada, even though it has multi-level traction control and ABS, I very rarely feel it kick in. I guess when I'm using the rear brake aggressively, you'll feel the ABS. I don't think I've ever felt the ABS kick in on the front. Well, not maybe a couple of times. And then in the traction control, I guess, has kicked in on some hard launches on less than ideal pavements. But this bike, where I've noticed things locking up is when shifting down at high revs. You're when you're hard on the brakes, shifting down, it doesn't have a slipper clutch or any kind of torque assist feature on the clutch, or torque relief feature rather. So earlier I was like high revs in third gear, braking, shifted into second, and I did feel the rear wheel lock up. I'm going to take this bike to the track on the 4th of July, and the only other time I've been to the track, I took a VFR 800, which also had no electronics of any sort, no ABS, and braking hard down from the back straight at Arroyo Seco, pretty much every time, I could feel the rear tire on that VFR 800 lock up. So I think I'm going to be in a similar situation with this bike. So I'll just have to be careful, especially because it's a new bike for me. I haven't ridden it but a couple of days. I'm going to try to go on some long canyon road rides this weekend to get a better feel for the bike and the turns, and also kind of to break in my new full leathers that I bought. Last time I went to the track, I had a two-piece setup. I had leather pants and a separate leather jacket, and so it kind of felt like street gear. This one-piece suit that I bought, it's the Icon one-piece suit that they just came out with recently. And I'll try to put the actual name of the suit here in the video once I edit it. But it's I like Icon's products in general. They just seem to function well. They're ergonomic, and at the same time I like the style, the design of the Icon products. But yeah, so I measured my body according to the Icon chart or sizing chart, and some of my measurements were calling for a size 52, some were calling for a size 50 or 48, whatever the next level down is. So I went with the larger one just to make sure I didn't have any uncomfortable tightness, and I'm glad I did, because if I had gone with a smaller size, it would have been, my torso would have been too long for it, I think. As it is, I feel like it does need to break in a little bit for it to get to its full comfort, but also the way it feels on my arms and legs, I think it's the right tightness there for the padding to stay in the right, or the protectors to stay in the right place, and at the same time still be comfortable. So I think it's the right size. I don't think there's like a perfect fit you can ever get with a suit. There's going to be some dimension or some part of your body that's a little bit different, and so I think for me on this, I think on the bike it's going to be fine. When I'm standing off the bike, it feels a little bit tight in the torso, in the vertical direction, like waist to shoulder feels a little bit tight. But we'll see. I'm going to go on a long ride, like I said, with the suit on tomorrow morning or Sunday morning, and try to get a better feel for it. See, so right there I felt the rear wheel lock up a little bit as I'm downshifting and braking it kind of aggressively, which with the slipper clutch and the Gen 2 Multistrada, I never feel that rear wheel lock up when I'm trying to slow down and downshift for an upcoming corner. So yeah, I mean, electronics are nice, but also on the track, I'd rather take a slightly lower cost bike. And I think, for the track, I'm not sure which bike would be better overall. If you're just talking about track duties, the Gen 2 Multistrada or the FZ1. I guess the FZ1 has a little bit more aggressive riding position. But the bar, you do have some weight on the bars. The foot pegs are higher and more like a sport bike, it feels, than the Multistrada. But the Multistrada seems to do great on tracks also. So I'm not too sure. And then this bike, because of the R1 rear suspension, might feel pretty stable as far as the rear end. So I don't know, it's probably a toss-up. But I guess the electronics sure would be nice as a safety net. But I'm just gonna take it kind of easy. It's a new bike. Haven't been to the track for like 10 years. I've only been to the track once, really, other than this time. So I'm gonna try to take it easy. Try not to let the more experienced riders pull me into riding over my head. And I'm also thinking of taking my Model 3 to the track. So in the morning I'll ride the bike, and then in the afternoon I'll ride the Model 3, as some of the motorcyclists, I'm sure, will be exhausted, and there'll be less of them on the track, and or when they're all in the pits, I'll get out there in the car, maybe go on some rides. There's a lot of EV and Model 3 haters in my riding group. So hopefully I can change a few more minds as they experience the Model 3 on track. Oh man, I forgot about this mess. What should I do here? I guess I'm gonna have to wait. It's pretty hot. Oh, another cool thing about the reflash on this bike is I think engine heat was kind of one of the complaints. So with the reflash, the fans kick in at 200 degrees Fahrenheit instead of I guess maybe with like 225 like it is typical on a lot of other bikes. So that should help with the engine heat. So far, it is a hot day. It's pretty much 100 degrees right now, or it's probably higher because we're on the asphalt. So it's probably more like 102, 103. And it does feel less hot than my Multistrada would in these same conditions. So I'm glad to see. That was one of my concerns, that maybe it was going to feel quite a bit hotter. So like I said, I'm glad to see that it doesn't feel bad. Lane splitting is not legal in Texas, but for short stints like this, usually you're fine. Oh, it also has an aftermarket exhaust, Yoshimura. How could I forget that? It's got crash protection, I guess just here. But yeah, so that's like initial ride impressions. It also has these LED turn signals. As I get more experience on the bike, I'll revisit my review and comparison with the Multistrada, but I'm liking it quite a bit so far.